This is an informal, open-ended book review video of Marie Kondo's. Do we even know the title of the book?
The life-changing magic of tidying up.
I was going to improv a totally different title. You'd be like, it's something like The Joy of Cleaning Your Shit Up. Or I don't even know. But,
that's a good alternative title.
That's right. The joy of getting your shit together. Look, the thing I want to say kicking off, I don't have any real agenda here. I mean, I could say broadly, it was a lot less awful than I thought it was going to be. But the other surprise is, this is not a book about minimalism. This is a book about animism. I think if you're being honest, this is a book, and toward the end...
tell you to greet your house. And
she grew up, she spent 5 years working in a Shinto shrine, and she literally believes that when you touch your clothes, you're transmitting energy to them. Mm-hmm. She has all this shit scattered through the book about her beliefs in magical trinkets and magical energy transfer, and, it's animism. Mm-hmm. And, as you say, actually literally talking to the house, talking to inanimate objects, talking to furniture, touching and transferring energy into the furniture, and, laying on hands, healing magic through touching.
Yeah.
This is animism. This is an animist worldview. And, Japan is maybe a uniquely tolerant culture or just a uniquely quirky and eccentric culture in terms of integrating animism into modern life. I've lived in Laos, even though in Laos we do have a lot of traditional old school religious beliefs, about ghosts and spirits. We really don't have animism in that sense. Even though people do believe there are ghosts hiding in things, we don't have this, not like this Japanese form of animism, where literally the shirt you own has animistic part. No, people in Laos are not like that about clothing or furniture in their house.
Yeah, I remember, I didn't read this book recently. I read it last summer.
Yeah, not that long ago though.
But not that long ago. But I do remember how she was discussing donating clothes and having the clothes find their next spiritual home, basically, and how that is good for you to do, to donate clothes, because if they're not really serving their purpose with you, they can serve their purpose with another person.
Right. So, I mean, the overall surprise for me, I guess, was that, this book is written with a certain type of reader in mind, kind of period. They assume that you're a certain kind of nebbish, compulsive person who's stored up a lot of goods. I should give a specific example. So she says, she assumes that most of her clients are people who live in Tokyo and who have parents with a larger house in the countryside, and they store their goods with their parents. Now, I'm not hating on it. It's just an assumption. Those are the types of people she works with. Those types, and they send things to be stored with their parents. Yeah. My assumptions, which I have to be aware of, I have to kind of fight against my own assumptions. I have to challenge my own assumptions about people. But in terms of my generation and people I've known coming up, the degree of kind of casual homelessness that's presumed for my generation, university-educated people who have never owned a home, who have never owned a car in many cases, who move from one place to another, even if it's just within Canada, who coast to coast within Canada are looking for work. I don't know people who've been able to hold on to and amass even baby photos. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is something she deals with at length, let alone the types of possessions she's talking about here. So I'm not hating on it, but it was a surprise to me that it was I thought this was going to be a manifesto for minimalism. That's what I thought it was going to counter. And it's not. On the one hand, it's really animism, not minimalism. And on the other hand, this is really not a message for everybody. It's a message for a certain type of personality from a certain type of socioeconomic background, which I'm not from, and the people I went to high school with and I went to college with are not from. I don't know those people. I'm sure they're out there. They're out there in the suburbs, amassing huge piles of sentimental objects and photographs and old video games or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are people this book speaks to, and obviously it's sold over 1 million copies and so on. But to me, if anything, it made sharper that kind of tragedy that the world as I see it, I'm not talking about poor people. I'm talking about middle class and even rich people I've known. The people I've known, they have nothing. You know what I mean? They go on from a BA to a life of this kind of, semi-homeless wandering. and never find permanent or durable employment. They go from one gig, including people with PhDs. We know so many people with PhDs like this, shuffling around from one short-term gig to another, never really amass anything, one Airbnb after another. You know what I mean? Like, and in some ways that's a beautiful life with a lot of, it's very mentally stimulating. Your horizons are always changing. You're definitely not stuck in the same cubicle at the same company for 20 years. But to me, if anything, this brought home like, wow, this is talking to a whole demographic that I only know through like sitcoms. I don't know people like this. I see them represented in sitcoms. I don't know them in real life.
Yeah, I don't have the same experience as you.
Yeah.
Well, I know from, we were just talking about potentially moving to Victoria, and you were just saying, like, I don't want to move to an apartment and furnish an apartment again and then move out less than a year later and have to throw out the stuff and go to another apartment, furnish another apartment.
Right.
Yeah, like, you really have lived, like, a nomadic lifestyle in that way, more than I have, because I grew up, in the same house, and, my parents still have all baby clothes, and not all baby clothes, but like baby pictures and a lot of toys and games and stuff like that. So I do think this could help potentially quite a few people that I know. One of my good friends, she has kept all of her diaries from when she was a kid.
Right.
Yeah. And even though they have moved house a couple times, like she does have a lot of the same stuff. Like she mentioned a pen that her grandfather gave her like when she was 7 years old, and she was like, "This is going to be the pen that you use to sign your first novel." like have your signature on your first novel, because she was a writer at the time. So quite a few people that I know, they still generally keep stuff at their parents' house or even live at their parents' house. But we come from different backgrounds, and we know different types of people.
Well, I mean, anyway. I think it's also okay. I mean, in some ways, it reflects globalization, neoliberalism, the 21st century economy, the digital economy, and everything else. And I mean, it reflects also the kind of glory of being able to send your resume by email to apply for jobs all over the world. There was one guy I met in England, and then like 5 years later, he got a job right next to me in Western Canada. It was just a coincidence. Like things like that happen to you. Like, oh, hey, last time I saw you, we were both living in England. Now we're both living on the west coast of Canada. Things like that happen too. And in some ways, it's plausible.
At the airport, too.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. I bumped into someone 10 years ago at the airport and so on. Sure. But like, I think specialization itself kind of leads to this nomadic life where you can own very little, whether or not it's a matter of choice. So we should come back. I mean, me as a particular example, I don't claim to represent my generation or anything. But, so before I was really involved in Buddhist studies, I was a scholar of Buddhism myself. I knew a lot about the scholars of Buddhism. So if somebody like that finds a gig in Hong Kong, and then a couple years later they find a gig in California, I mean, in the whole world globally, there are only a few opportunities for Buddhist scholars to pursue, or they can create their own opportunities to some extent. But yeah, those guys are always on the move. And that's just one specialized field I've known, whether it's anthropologists or people in politics or people in the arts. I've known a lot of, and they never stop moving.
Right.
So the other thing is, now look, I mean, this also prefigures my engagement with Buddhism. So I've never had a period in my life like that this book would pertain to. I've never had a period in my life where I'd amassed enough that I need to give stuff away or throw stuff away or what have you. But I mean, for me, starting as a teenager, some of this and not others, but I had no furniture in my bedroom. I slept on the floor, and I can talk about why that was. I didn't consider myself a minimalist, I slept on the floor. I owned very, very few possessions for many years. So in university, I would only ever own 3 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, 3 jackets. I had a maximum of 3 for each element of clothing. So I just wore black suits, like black business suit with a white shirt and a black tie and a gray top coat. Yeah.
You live what Marie Kondo wants for the clients that she works with, to have only like a certain amount of each. Way
less, right? And I think way more spare, right? And that was before I got involved with Buddhist philosophy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just being involved with philosophy, period. That was the way I chose to live my life. Now, there were a lot of things. I mean, it also really reflects. So we got a question from the audience. Only 3 socks. No, I had more than 3 pairs of socks. Part of the thing about that was if one of the pairs of pants is dirty or ripped or something, I got to sew it. Then you got to have enough of something to cope with some of the stuff. But no, I had more than 3 socks. Yeah, I don't think I ever limited myself on socks. So good point. Touche, Curtis. Well spotted. Anyway, so I've never owned, right now, I do not own a single photograph of any of my own grandparents, neither on paper nor digitally. I don't own a single photograph of myself as a baby, neither on paper nor digitally. So, starting at a pretty early age. But the real difference between me and Mary Kondo, and again, between me and the real minimalist, because I don't regard Mary Kondo as a minimalist. The people who are on YouTube talking about minimalism, I really think Mary Kondo is a significantly different ideology. But I actually do not think my life, in making those decisions, I don't think it's something other people should emulate. I see a lot more tragedy than triumph in that decision and that path I walked. Now, okay, to mention, I don't want to go into too much depth here, but I was horrified when I met other young people my age, both male and female. We've got questions coming in the live stream. How many socks exactly did I own? I didn't count. So therefore, countless. I was really shocked when I met young men and at least one young woman my age, and they could not sleep without a long list of bizarre things. So there was one girl, and she couldn't sleep without her comforter and her duvet, this whole complex setup, And I met a couple boys where they couldn't sleep without music playing continuously while they were asleep, and a list of, bizarre requirements and stuff. And I really trained myself. I wanted to be able to lie down and sleep on a floor with nothing, with no pillow, with no blanket, so that when the time comes and I needed to, I could, Now this really reflects, it does partly reflect philosophical interests of mine, reading ancient Greek and Latin philosophy, what have you, but it also reflects the political view of the world I grew up with, that World War III was coming, that extreme political strife and struggle was coming. And you and I, just unrelated, but when we look at the assassination of these major figures, like Martin Luther King Jr. or something, part of me, in terms of the childhood upbringing I had, is kind of screaming inside, like, didn't they know how to, shave their head, adopt a false identity, sleep in the ghetto, disappear? When we watched Casablanca, and I'm sorry, so the propagandist character, not the main character. I'm sorry, so the woman's husband in Casablanca. Oh, I'm forgetting his name.
Sorry.
Yeah, I also forget his name. Yeah. Anyway, but there's this character who's running away from Nazi persecution, but he's living the high life. He's at the baccarat table, he's gambling, he's staying in fancy hotels, he's keeping a high profile. And looking at him thinking, don't you know to go sleep on the floor, sleep in the ghetto, disappear, you know what I mean? So it was kind of this sense of that, your life, if you took yourself seriously as a political person, you kind of always had to be prepared to join the French resistance. I mean, to keep it within the Casablanca or something. You had to be prepared for unforeseeable extreme circumstances and so on. So yeah, it was partly to that I really wanted to train myself to sleep on the floor with no blanket, with no pillow. I did go through a period of time actually sleeping naked on the floor with no blanket, no pillow. So I didn't even have pajamas or anything on. Yeah, it's hard, but you get used to it. That was the experience I wanted to have. So yeah, really my reasons and concerns were very different from the minimalist or Mary Kondo. But with all that having been said, whether you come at it from a Buddhist angle or a totally European philosophical angle or a political angle or a preparedness angle or a self-training angle, fundamentally, if you don't have a ton of stuff to throw away, this advice is just kind of meaningless to you. And the core of the advice is, if you own few enough items, you don't have to organize them. Yes, that's really
right. Yeah, she says you don't have to tidy each day if you at one
tidy
time
twice a year.
Do this. Yeah.
Right.
Do this huge
right.
throwing away process of all the stuff.
Right. But look, I mean, you don't have to organize your closet when you only own 3 pairs of pants.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, right?
You only own 1 pair of scissors.
Right. Well, or if it's, those are the pants I wore yesterday, therefore these are the pants I'm wearing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Your life is simple.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
I don't think other people should live the way I lived. You know what I mean? I don't believe in it. The fact that I did it and the fact that I live by it doesn't mean I believe in it. I'm a nihilist. I don't even believe in my own lifestyle choices. I'm really critical of them. I really see the disadvantages. You see what you have to say. What are you going to say?
Yeah, no, I think it could help my parents, but I don't think my mom would actually. She wouldn't buy into the animist stuff, but I think she does need help getting rid of things, because when she needs to find something, Marie Kondo does mention this in the book, when you need to find a pair of scissors, you have to shuffle through your drawers and try to figure out where things are. So I do think it can be helpful for some people, just not really taking her advice like, as gospel, but using some of her work as inspiration to get rid of some stuff. Like they're planning on moving eventually, but they've lived in this house for 24 years. And they've amassed a ton of things. I mean, and I think that's a problem with people who have kids and are just in one house throughout the kids' years. It's easy to amass a lot of
your home can become a museum for left behind items for your children. Right? Right. This came up in my earlier videos against minimalism. Mm-hmm. But Marie Kondo, she has this unique idea: you should only keep things if they spark joy. Yeah. And I do think indirectly that's part of her animist thing. You touch the item, you talk to the item, it speaks to you. It sparks joy or whatever. So this is her philosophical approach to life.
Yeah.
But for me, there are real questions about productivity. Okay, you want to be an artist. If you want to paint canvases, you have a studio full of all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
Like stuff. Yes, paintbrushes. But when you visit some artist studios, there's somewhere like you might wonder, why do you have a bunch of spheres of different sizes? And there's going to be an answer like, oh, well, sometimes to check the perspective of something, they're just, weird objects around that have all kinds of other uses, foreseen and unforeseen, anticipated. You have to amass, I can't even call it equipment, but, stuff.
Yeah, I can see that for people who do a lot of odd jobs around their house, too.
Right. Marie Kondo obviously doesn't, repair car engines or something,
Right.
But, I mean, likewise, I think when you look at it in that sense of kind of productivity rather than joy, I think you very rapidly expand the scope for how much people show, and that's one of the reasons why I'm critical of myself. Like even I wish I owned things I don't own, and sometimes things I did own in the past and had to part ways with because I could use them productively. She's very skeptical about that. She's very skeptical you're ever going to read a book that you have on a shelf for 10 years. She's like, oh, well, just throw away these books because you can buy them again anyway. Whatever. But
and I know one part of the book that you just mentioned recently, because of all of what you've studied, you've had a lot of notes that you've had to throw away that probably would be useful to read, or at least you would like to look back on them.
Right. And she's very skeptical of that. She really says, no, notes you've taken from university lectures, you'll never going to
look at them again. Right.
Well, maybe I'm the one person out of a million. But the same way an artist really may make productive use of objects that seem completely unproductive. Maybe someone who's really a scholar or really cares about whatever the topic is really would make productive use out of those notes or those books or whatever, even if they sit in the shelf. I got an email from Nicholas Ostler, an author whose work I've contributed to in the past. Nicholas Ostler just moved house, and he moved 14,000 books. His personal library has 14,000 volumes, including ancient Greek, Latin, Persian, Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, a lot of language study, and endangered languages too. So, different people make different lifestyle choices.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. Maybe I don't want to be like overselling but you do have a very good memory. I really don't think you need to go back and read many of the books that you've read because you can really give me an accurate summary of things that you've read in the past.
Right, but
last night we were talking about Wealth of Nations, and you were really giving me exactly what Adam Smith had said,
which I read 20 years ago or something. But that is true. But if I want to write an essay, I got to be able to cite page numbers. That's true. So that's another thing. Yeah. But look, and the only thing I was going to say about productivity, I mean, it really is a Tokyo-centered book in philosophy. She says, oh well, if you ever need one of these things, throw out all this stuff. If in the future you ever actually need this thing, you can just go out and buy it.
Yes,
well, that's true if you live in downtown Tokyo. That's not true if you live in Saskatchewan, Canada. Mm-hmm. That's not true if you live in a lot of places. A lot of stuff is she's talking about throwing out tools, useful items, and it's true. Maybe you only use it once every 5 years or something. But no, a lot of the stuff, depending on where you live, you can't just go out and buy. Or maybe downtown Tokyo is the only place.
Yeah, it's funny because you were mentioning that it's these that what the book is directed towards are these people who are able to store things at their parents' house. Well, that's right now. I'm living in China with a quarter of what I own, and the 75% is at my parents' house. Right. So I guess she is kind of speaking to me, but.
Okay, so if I could put it in a nutshell, for me, I was expecting this book to be a minimalist attack on the sentimentality of owning objects. Yeah. And it's not. If anything, it's an animist.
Be more sentimental about your items.
Right.
And to like have each item get more praise or more just attention from you than
it's really like an animist transcendentalist approach to sentimentalizing objects, to being even more sentimental about your relationships with the inanimate objects you own and with the environment you live in.
Yeah. Right.
So is that the future? is the future a revival of animism in the decadent West? I doubt it.
No, but I think her tendency to say that you can just throw things out is that a lot of things that people do own are disposable or just not as good a quality as they used to be, and then just like with technology, like like I do have a laptop that is 8 years old, and I'm like, why am I even holding on to it? Because like, what is the point? And that's not going to be useful in 20 years from now. Yeah. Whereas like a tool will be. So
yeah. Well, it's another peculiar irony, though. The people I see praising Marie Kondo, including Mod Vegan, my great enemy here on YouTube. my fellow vegan YouTuber, who I sometimes cross swords with in debates here on YouTube. But, Mod Vegan represents zero waste minimalism. That's really not what this book is. This book, if anything, is
wasteful. Yeah.
It's maximizing your waste. And it's openly admitting, if you live this way, you will more often have to go out and buy things that you did own in the past, but you got rid of, so you could live, in this aesthetic and magical lifestyle.
Yeah, so, living the life that you envisioned. Yeah.
But this is not an ecological paradigm. This is not a zero-waste paradigm. And this is not really a minimalist paradigm. Mm-hmm. As Marie Kondo herself says, this is an argument that's centrally based on joy and her peculiar, distinctly Shinto, Tokyo, Japanese bourgeois philosophy of where joy comes from, and apparently it comes from empty shelves.
Yeah, and I guess I can be critical of it because not a lot of people will not find that their life has more magic in it. She talks about the magic of tidying up, or that your life will improve so much. You'll. One quote was that she left her husband after reading the book.
Satisfied customers include the woman who left her husband, because when she was done tidying her house, she decided to get rid of the husband too. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it won't work for everybody. Yeah, I don't think it's the case that everybody will benefit from tossing stuff that they don't want anymore. But anyway.
Yeah. So, and in related news, Bal Ciel Broadcasting Corporation is bringing out a T-shirt and a children's storybook. So buy all our stuff. And all right, that's a wrap.